In an absolutely shocking move, it seems that Canada's new Prime Minister has just teamed up with his rival political party, the same party he beat in the recent election, and they're teaming up in order to pass a new law that would set into motion a controversial plan. While this plan claims to be about boosting the Canadian economy and helping Canadians get jobs in the face of the ongoing trade conflict, in reality, some concerning red flags are popping up, especially in my eyes. Red flags that not only could set a dangerous precedent, but also raises fears of potential corruption, costing Canadians billions. The twist here is that the Conservatives, who would typically be raising these concerns themselves, seem to be treating this as an opportunity. Let me explain how all of this could impact you. This plan is all outlined inside of Bill C-5, and it's split into two parts. The first part aims to make the regulations in different provinces align so that we can more easily trade interprovincially. That seems pretty reasonable. It also allows labor mobility. If you have a certification in one province, well, you should be able to get a similar job in another province. Also reasonable. But the second part is where things get interesting. This is the Building Canada Act. It gives the government overwhelming new powers in order to set up national projects, things that they can fast track through and be able to get done more quickly. Canada has a well-known problem in building things. You have to get permits. There's all kinds of different regulations, environmental and others, and it's hard to build in Canada. So also at face value, this seems kind of reasonable. But seemingly, as always, the devil is in the details, and there are some pretty big potential devils here. We'll get to them in just a second. In a normal situation, this bill would have a hard time getting passed before the government goes on their, 2.5-month break. These green days indicate where the House of Commons is in session and where new bills could potentially be passed, meaning that we have to pass this bill by the end of the week, otherwise it's not going to happen until the fall. As a result, the government is trying to fast track this bill, put it forward into motion. This leads to many things being skipped or dramatically shortened. Important things when it comes to drafting a bill like this. All the committee meetings where they might go into the details of, okay, do we really want to give the government this power, or do we want to make some minor changes here to account for such and such an issue? Well, all of that will be dramatically shortened, and this has been allowed by the Conservatives, who have teamed up with the Liberals. Let me show you this recent article. Just yesterday, the Conservative Party teamed up with the minority Liberal government to support the speeding up of debate on the internal trade bill. Note they don't talk about the nation-building giant project part of this bill, just that first part, which is entirely reasonable. In a dramatic shift from the way the Canadian government worked before in the last government, well, this time the Liberals have teamed up with the Conservatives to pass a motion that allows for this fast tracking, and their partner has been the Conservatives. The vote went 305 to 30, with that 30 being all of the MPs from the Bloc Québécois, NDP, and Green Party. This is not typically how things go. What is going on here? It's very interesting. The Liberal Member of Parliament, Nate Erskine-Smith, a member of the party who introduced this bill and essentially led it into existence, well, he recently laid out some major problems that he has with this new plan, again, despite it being from his party.
We are sacrificing other important values. We aren't thinking about unintended consequences, and we are actively undermining our parliamentary democracy. This federal government is proposing to shut down democratic debate, curtail committee scrutiny, and jam the bill through the legislature. It would all actually make Harper blush. Liberals would rightly scream, that we would scream if a federal Conservative government attempted the same. We are rushing legislation through Parliament under the auspices of an urgent threat, but we aren't willing to put Parliament to work for what, an additional week to get things right?
Despite these serious criticisms, Erskine, well, he ended up voting in favor of the fast tracking and helped to push the bill forward. Now, he does talk in this clip about the government overreach issues and how this plan could lead to big decisions being made for Canada's national interest, despite the possibility of actual Canadian citizens having conflicting ideas of what is actually in their interests. Everybody has a different opinion. But there's another glaring issue that is especially sensitive and something that stands out to me, given the bad taste that the previous government under Trudeau left in many people across the country's mouths. This is the biggest problem with the bill as I see it. It gives the government the ability to pick corporate winners and losers, choose which companies succeed and which ones don't. It gives power to the current government to choose which laws apply and to whom. For example, say there was a company associated with one of these big potential national projects. The government would be able to decide what regulations they'll have to follow and what ones they won't. As we know, it's hard to build things and it's hard to get things done in Canada, so there is an argument to be made that this is a good thing. They can bypass these laws that aren't working in order to get things built. But it does have the potential to push forward the development of projects for some companies and railroad the projects of others, all at the behest of whoever's in power. It reminds me a lot of the conflict that actually led to our most recent election. Parliament was dissolved because it was no longer functional because the Conservatives were pressing the Liberals extremely hard on something called the Sustainable Development Technology Canada Fund, a multi-billion-dollar fund that gave certain companies lots and lots of money to develop sustainable technology. Sounds good in some ways, but the Auditor General released a report that said, hey, millions of dollars were given out and a lot of these companies weren't actually doing any sustainable development tech. It was a government agency choosing winners and losers, enriching friends, and not giving money to people that they don't know. In this context, I think it's reasonable to question the new powers that this Bill C-5 would give the government. More powers to choose winners and to choose losers. Choose who can skip the $1 million environmental assessment to get something built, and which companies are still going to have to do that, making them immediately not competitive. And it also links into some of the concerns that came up during the election and continuing to today with the Prime Minister not fully disclosing his financial assets. If you don't fully disclose your financial assets and then all of a sudden have arbitrary power to choose which companies succeed and which ones don't, well, that's a conflict of interest. Whether reasonable to worry about that with Carney or not, you got to imagine that if this was a different Prime Minister, a Conservative Prime Minister, or any Prime Minister, that, well, a lot of people would be concerned with that kind of thing. Now, don't get me wrong. I know it's hard to build in Canada. I know that a lot of these regulations are arduous or challenging to get by, but I worry about this being precedent setting. Suspending laws that make it cumbersome to build, well, that's a good idea, right? If a law's not working, you should, well, change that law. But giving the power to just cut it out and only for certain people doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Why not just make the changes to those rules themselves instead of suspending it for some, but not for all people? It doesn't seem entirely fair to me. And it's confusing to me as to why the Conservatives would be on board with letting this happen. This essentially gives the Liberal government free rein to do, well, whatever they like. Just deem something a national project and boom, you don't have to worry about passing any new laws or legislation in a minority government, which can be challenging to do. You can skip all of that and just go for it. Now, I do have a few theories as to why the Conservatives may have done this, but we'll get to those in just a second. I want to take 20 seconds of your time to let you know that I've started a new membership program here on the channel. It's an additional way to support the channel if you like this type of content. If you're familiar with Patreon, it's a lot like that, but it's built on my own platform that gives us a lot more flexibility with what we can do. When you join, you get access to a group chat that I'm in, and monthly group video calls, and a private video feed where I'll upload bonus content over time. Now, the first video call will be in a couple of weeks, and I'd love to see you there. Now, we'll be adding more features over time, and as I do add those features, well, the membership price will go up marginally. So if you're interested in something like this, make sure to lock in now to secure your lower rate for the long run. The link is in the description, or you can scan the QR code on your screen. Now, back to the story. When the government was asked why this fast tracking was happening, why isn't there more debate and more consideration about the long-term effects of making a drastic change like this, and why isn't the government just mandating that politicians work for an extra couple weeks to do that kind of thing? Well, the Canadian Minister for Energy and National Resources essentially said, well, we were forced to do this because of Trump. Trump created a crisis.
I think the Prime Minister has been clear. We are in a trade war. We need to move as quickly as possible. Canadians are losing their jobs today. We continue to see unjust tariffs put on different sectors over and over again. One of the key things about this bill is it will get projects moving. It will give us the opportunity to create employment for people who are now facing challenges. It will stimulate development in our economy as this trade war is hurting us across sector. And so we'll do everything we can from a consultation perspective, but the Prime Minister's been clear we need to move quickly given the unjust trade war that we're in right now.
To a certain extent, he's right. Giant projects like this could create jobs for Canadians, boosting the economy through higher levels of government spending on these types of projects, and also getting things started more quickly by bypassing procedures. But to me, this more so highlights the idea that it's far easier to govern in a crisis. If you have a reason to point at to say things need to go quickly, well then maybe there will be more of a reason for Canadians to sort of let you off the hook when that type of thing happens. It reminds me of what largely happened during the pandemic with the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy and the Canada Emergency Business Loans that went out to people. The speed at which these programs were created and passed through Parliament, well, it resulted in a lack of thoroughness and accountability, leading to tons of companies who didn't qualify or shouldn't have qualified for these extremely expensive business loans that were forgivable. They didn't have to pay back, as well as the wage subsidies. Well, a lot of money went into the wrong hands. A lot of people got rich, and they didn't do so by exactly following the rules, more so by using loopholes created by this speed at which the new laws were passed. What happened back then feels a lot like what's happening today. And it's not to measure or minimize the validity of either of these crises or the trade conflict going on in the case of today, but there certainly is space for that type of criticism. This is a minority government in the Liberals that's not governing like a minority. They're using speed to tamp down on any potential concerns. Now, they wouldn't be able to do this, though, if the Conservatives didn't support them, because all of the other parties wanted to vote against this. The leader of the Bloc Québécois recently came out very much so against this bill. He made these statements in French, so I'll translate. He said Quebecers and Canadians did not give Mark Carney a majority mandate. They gave him a minority mandate. And they very clearly, and even the Conservatives to a significant extent, have said that we are open to discussion in order to make Parliament work in the context of trade negotiations. So the Prime Minister's impetuosity in overloading the legislative agenda in the short term and circumventing the usual parliamentary rules from the very beginning of his mandate, this is an issue. And an NDP member of Parliament recently made similar criticisms, although from the frame of this being a way that the government can override the rights of some Indigenous tribes. Now, this article that outlines the Conservatives' viewpoint was written a couple of days before that viewpoint was broadly revealed with that vote that we talked about earlier. The Conservatives are supporting the Liberals when it comes to Bill C-5. The question is why, and that's what these statements highlight. This is from Luke Berthold, the Deputy House Leader for the Conservatives. He said that when a minority government decides it wants certain things, it needs to negotiate with all parties. So we're awaiting the result of these negotiations. It seems like the Conservatives and the Liberals have made a deal. What could this deal look like? What would be worth it? Could it include the elimination of the industrial carbon tax or codifying into law the elimination of both the consumer and industrial carbon tax? That's been a Conservative priority. Could it guarantee that a pipeline will be built as a part of this nation-building mass project? Now, no matter what this deal is, I don't think it's a good idea to go along to get along on this issue because simply of the precedent it sets. No matter the issue, I worry a lot about precedent setting when it comes to any government operating. If there's a political party that you don't trust, whether that's Liberals, Conservatives, or anyone else, well then you can't allow the party that you do trust to do anything you wouldn't want the other party that you don't trust doing, even if this time it aligns with your goals and aligns with what you like. I say this about this bill, but I also said it about the trucker convoy and the use of the Emergency Measures Act. Just because you may not agree with what the convoy was doing doesn't mean that this type of extreme power should be used to tamp it down. The same goes for formal mandates of a vaccine. What if a government that you thought was authoritarian and you thought didn't have your best interests at heart, what if they told you that you had to do something with your body that you didn't want to do. It's this type of precedent setting that I get concerned about in a lot of different areas. Because it doesn't say anything about your views of the particular policy, in this case, the building of these big national projects. It's a good idea. I don't think that we need to be giving this type of power going forward in order to get these things done. And I worry about the long-term precedent that it sets if all future leaders are seen as, well, that previous government did it, so we should ram through our own ability to make whatever decisions we want to without parliamentary oversight. I'm getting a little worked up about it, but I don't know. Do you think I'm making a mountain out of a molehill on this? I definitely see the positive side of this. Well, we can build these things and we can bypass all of these cumbersome laws, but I just don't understand why you wouldn't go in and change those laws instead of just giving this huge power. Am I missing something here? Let me know in the comments what you think about all this. And as I mentioned earlier, at the first link in the description, you can find the new channel membership where you get access to my group chat as well as these monthly video calls and extra bonus content. I'd love to see you in there. But with all of that said, thanks so much for watching, everybody. Really hope this video helped you out at least a little bit, and I'll see you next time.